God bless everyone this morning. Exodus chapter 2, and it starts by telling us a story that a man took a wife for himself, and they had a son, and the son was beautiful, the scriptures say here in verse 2. So the woman hid the child for 3 months, and when she could not hide the child any longer, she took a basket, pitched it on the outside and probably the inside, made it watertight, and put the child in it and put him on the river and let him float down the river. Now, this may be a hard thing to accept. You might be thinking, how could she do this? Anything could have happened to the child. Well, for a start, she didn't do this lightly, because she kept the child for 3 months. That could have cost her her life, her husband's life, and the life of her children as well, the rest of her children, because Pharaoh had given an order that all children should die, all male children. And we find out later on that Moses has brothers and sisters. So this is the child now called Moses, who's been put into this basket by this woman, by his mother. And in some respects, you know, we live in a very evil, corrupt world. We do. And we can try and protect our children as much as we want. But at the end of the day, we have to do what this woman did. We have to have faith in God and pray that God will watch over them. Because that's what this woman did. She put her faith in God, that God would watch over this child. When she put him into the basket, when she put him into the Nile, which was the river Nile, full of crocodiles, full of all sorts of things, the child could have died, but she trusted in God. And that's what we have to do with our own children. We have to trust in God sometimes, as much as we want to protect them. But it also says that his sister followed along the bank. And that's what we can do. We can pray for our fellow brothers, our fellow sisters. We can watch out for them. We can pray and hope that the Lord will take care of them. But ultimately, their life is in the hands of the Lord. Their walk with God is in God's hands. You know, we can try and help someone as much as we can, pray for them, watch them as much as we can. But ultimately, everyone has to walk, has to stand with God, and we have to leave them with the Lord. And this is exactly what this woman and this sister did. They left them in the hands of the Lord. Then we get the rest of the story that, you know, Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe in the river. She seen the baby. She got the baby. You know, she loved the child when she seen it. She wanted to raise it as her own. And then it says that she got the Hebrew woman to come and nurse the child, probably his mother. We're not too sure. And then it tells us that the child grew, and his name was Moses. And it tells us that it came to pass in those days when Moses grew, verse 11, that he went out to his brethren. Now, how did he know it was his brethren? How did he know that he was not Egyptian? How did he know that the Hebrews, the Jews, were his brethren? Because he was raised by a Hebrew woman. And his Hebrew woman was his nurse. She took care of him. So she would have told him the truth. He would have known the truth from a child, that he wasn't really part of this world. And even though our children's in this world, even though they're surrounded by the world, you know, we have to tell them that they're not of this world. We have to tell them, you know, that heaven is their home if they put their faith and their trust in the Lord. And hopefully, prayerfully, one day, just like Moses, you know, our children will come to his brethren. Our children will come and be among his brethren. And it says, as we read on, that Moses went and he looked, and he saw that there was 2 men fighting. And it says that he interrupted these 2 men fighting. One was an Egyptian, one was a Hebrew. Probably a slave driver, the other one was probably somebody who looked over the slaves. And it says that he killed the Egyptian. In the heat of the moment, he killed the Egyptian. And then it says that he buried him in the sand. So he thought he got away with it. He thought nobody knew. He probably thought God won't mind because he's an Egyptian. And that, he was beating another Hebrew up. So maybe in his mind he thought, I've done a good thing. But to his surprise, a couple of days later, he finds out that there's two Hebrews having an argument. And he goes to stop the argument. And one of them turns around and says, are you going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian? Now he fears for his life because he's killed an Egyptian. And he reckons that his life will be demanded of him as well. The secret will come out that he is a Hebrew. Everyone will know who he is. He'd be chucked out of Pharaoh's palace. More than likely he would have been imprisoned. More than likely he would have been killed for killing the Egyptian. Because at the end of the day, he is only a Hebrew. He is not the true son of this Egyptian woman. So he runs. He runs for his life. And he goes into the desert. And there we see that he finds a woman at a well. And there we see that he helps this woman. And then he goes back to this woman's father. And there we see that Moses then marries this woman. And he starts to take care of his father-in-law's flocks. He becomes part of this woman's family. So he's probably thinking now, this is my lot. He's a man in his probably early 40s at this stage. He's probably thinking, this is the end of the road for me now. I'll live the rest of my life out here, raise my family, look after these flocks for this man, look after these animals, and that'll be my lot. But then the story really begins, because in verse 23 it says, now it happened in the process of time that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel groaned because of the bondage. In other words, the hard labor that they was doing. And they cried out, and their cry came up to God because of the bondage. So God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. Now, when it says God remembered, it doesn't mean that he forgot about them. It just means that he chose to act at this time. And then we read in 25, and God looked upon the children of Israel, and God acknowledged them. So this is where the point where God says, now I'm going to act. Now I'm going to send someone to deliver them. So God willing, tomorrow we'll have a look at chapter 3 of Exodus.